Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am M.K.JABEEN. Today in this video introducing before you the concept of increment and decrement using floating point numbers and integer numbers by 1 or 0.1 by n number of times, that is n number of times we have to increment or decrement the variable value where n is a floating point number using my header file FIID.h, that is FIID means float, int, increment, decrement. Here first concept is the variable value is a floating point number and increment or decrement by 1. Number of times increment or decrement is 1. Notation FII and FID, that is FII means float into increment, FID means float into decrement. Second concept is variable value floating point number increment or decrement by 1 and number of times the incrementation or decrementation is n, that is a floating point number, and notations are n, FII, n, FID, that is n number of times float into increment, n number of times float into decrement. And third concept is a floating point number, that is variable value is a floating point number and we have to increment and decrement it by 0.1 and n number of times. Notations are NFFI, that is n float increment, NFFD means n float decrement, because the increment or decrement by is 0.1, a floating point number. And fourth concept is the variable value floating point number and increment or decrement by a given floating point number and number of times n number of times, that we have to give value to the n also, and floating point number also, by which it has to be increment or decrement to a variable value given by us. Okay, notations are NFFVI, NFFVD, that is n number of times floating point number, floating point variable increment, n number of times floating point number, floating point variable decrement. Here I have executed the example using my header file in Jaben software. You can also execute it in C or C++ software and C or C++ with Increment software. For the first, I have double clicked on Jaben software and opened a new file and named it as FIID and saved as FIID.Jaben and executed the example. Let's see the execution using my header file FIID.h.